Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're making the most basic jollof rice recipe which you can easily make without any dragon juice or anything that is interesting, but just basic things that you can easily get on the market, right? So I start off by chopping up some onions, added in some habanero chili, as much as you want really, and some garlic, some rosemary, some anise seeds, some bay leaves, and some ginger, which I forgot to video. So you blend it up, not to perfection, because I usually think that when you do it to perfection, it gives off some bitter taste that I do not like. So please don't make it, don't blend it to perfection, basically. So I fried in some onions, and then I added in some bay leaves, some anise seeds, some thyme, some rosemary, and some curry powder. You can add a bit more if you want, but when it comes to cooking with spices, moderation is key. Make sure that everything balances out very well, so you take it bit by bit and you build on the flavors. And another trick too is that always make sure that your fire is low so that everything will take its time to cook, and then all the aromas would come out as you would want them to be. All right, moderation is key. Always remember that. After about frying for about 10 minutes, I add in my tomato puree. I make sure that it's not too much because it has a sour taste that I usually do not like, but some people like it, but I do not. So I always fry it from the beginning, just so that all that sourness comes out of the stew, basically. So you have to stir as much as possible to prevent burning, because once your jollof starts burning from the base, it's quite impossible for the main meal to not to burn, right? So you fry it for about 5 minutes, and then you add in your blended aromatics from the beginning, and then you stir it in. I mean, this dish requires a lot of stirring to prevent burning, because once I mix it all up, I cover it halfway and make sure that it cooks on low heat, just so that all the water evaporates from it. And then I stir. And once I realize that all the water is gone, I add in my blended tomatoes. You can use canned tomatoes, you can use puree, you can use cut tomatoes. It really is dependent on what you like, but I prefer my tomatoes blended. Some people do not even use fresh tomatoes at all, but that is really dependent on you. After all the water has evaporated from the tomato sauce, I add in some rice. I usually do not like too much rice because I want the stew to overpower the rice, and then I also like a lot of moisture, so I do not toast my rice like what people usually do, because one thing is that it makes the cooking process much more difficult, and then it kind of stops the cooking process in the middle. It's just a mess, basically. So always make sure that you have a lot of moisture. So here I put in my chicken stock. It could be beef stock, it could be anything that is flavorful from any good protein. It works just fine, but just make sure that you have enough moisture, just so that you're not stuck in between the cooking process trying to sprinkle water, covering with napkins, yada yada, because nobody wants to be chewing rice as though they're eating plantains, right? So make sure that the rice is soft and grainy all together, and that is very much achievable. All right, so I pour in some water just to make sure that my cooking is not tiring. All right. So you keep on stirring it in. Make sure that the bottom is clean and free from any burnt parts. So I add in some salt, because after you add in the rice and the water, it can actually make the salt or the seasoning, go lower a bit. So I add in some salt, just a little to overpower it. Then I cover it for about 15 minutes, and then when I come back to check, the rice is almost cooked, halfway cooked, I would say, and then a lot of the stew has settled on one side, so you have to stir it up to loosen up the rice and ensure that all the stew gets to every part of the rice. And then I cover it up with aluminium foil to trap the steam. So once I add in the rice and the water from the beginning, right, I always go with very high fire to make sure that the water boils very well, and then the rice gets as much moisture as possible. So after all the water has evaporated, I turn the heat very low, as you saw, as though I'm turning it off, and then I let it cook, take its time to cook. So after about 20 minutes, I come and check in on it, and the rice is it's really coming together. The steam is everywhere, but I still need to stir it up to loosen it up so that the steam can go to every part of the rice or the pots, whichever one that makes sense to you. One trick that I learned was that you have to create a well in the middle, because that's where most of the steam comes from, so that it can easily distribute into other parts of the pot, so that every part of the rice is cooked properly. So I do that. I keep checking in on it about 3 times within the space of about 30 minutes. I check every 10 minutes basically, just to make sure that the rice is not burning, and just to make sure that the heat is distributed evenly. And at this point, it's cooked, it's soft, all the water has evaporated, it has been cooking slowly for a while, and it's so aromatic, it's tasty. I didn't need any bouillon or any fancy seasoning or spices, and we served it with some creamy coconut and chicken curry, and we loved it. So please try it. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching.